Hello, dear friends. In this lesson, we're going to understand loop concepts in Python. So let's get started. So what are these loops? Well, loops are statements that make code run repeatedly, as the name may imply. So in general, statements are executed sequentially, right? The first statement in a function is executed first, followed by the second, and so on. There may be a situation when we need to execute a block of code several numbers of times. Now, at that point, a loop statement will allow us to execute a statement or a group of statements multiple times. Now, there are two kinds of loop statements: while loops and for loops. So let's start with the while loops. While loops will allow us to repeat one or more actions while a condition remains true. So when a condition becomes false, program control passes to the line immediately following the loop. Let's have a look and see how that works. So let's define a variable named I and print it repeatedly. I equals 0, while I is less than 15. Print I plus equals 1. So here we define the I variable's value, 0, and we created a while loop. And the loop printed the I values from 0 to 15, and then our loop ended after reaching 14. Now try to print hello world 20 times. I equals 0, while I is less than 20. Print hello world. I plus equals 1. As you can see that our loop will work a while and then it stops because we defined a limit, and every time it reruns, after our I value will increase by 1. So when it reaches that limit, it stops. So what if our I value doesn't increase? Well, let's have a look. I equals 0, while I is less than 20. Print I. Oh boy. As you can see, our loop will not stop, and yeah, it'll run forever. That's why it's called an infinite loop or endless loop. So there you go. If you do try to run this code, then you've got to be able to click the interrupt the kernel here. And then click restart the kernel here. Okay, the kernel has restarted now, and Jupyter's back working again. So as you just saw, and maybe you did, maybe you didn't try it on your own, if we don't increment the variable I, the value of the variable I remains constant 0, and the loop condition remains constant true. So then Python will print the I variable repeatedly until we stop the kernel. Now we can talk about our other loop. The for statement allows you to repeat an action or several actions for each item in a sequence of items. For example, a string is a sequence of individual characters, right? So why don't we see how it works? For characters in Python, print character. Upon entering the statement, it assigns the P in Python to the target variable between keywords for and in this case, character. And after executing the code, Python assigns to character the next item in the sequence, that is, the Y in Python. Then it executes the code again. And then this will continue while there are more items in the sequence to process. So in this case, the statement terminates after displaying the letter N. So now let's talk about some fundamental stuff in loops. Maybe you have this question. So what should we do if we want to exit before the loop is complete, or we want to change the loop flow? Well, in Python, we can do that with a control statement. Loop control statements change execution from its normal sequence. So when execution leaves a scope, all automatic objects that were created in that scope are destroyed. Python supports the following control statements: break statement, continue statement, and pass statement. So our first control statement is break. It is most commonly used statement by programmers in loops. So with the help of this statement, we can interrupt an ongoing process. Thus, the cycle is terminated without being bound to any condition. For example, number equals 0, while number is less than 15, print number plus equals 1. Now we know this loop, right? So let's use a break statement. Number equals 0 while number is less than 15. Print number if I equals 9. Break number plus equals 1. And as you can see, when the number variable's value reaches 9, the loop stopped and terminated. The most common use for a break is when some external condition is triggered requiring a hasty exit from a loop. Also, the break statement terminates only the loop in which it exists. So if there are other nested loops and a break is used in the innermost loop, only that innermost loop ends. So our second statement is continue. The task of the continue statement is to ensure that everything that follows is skipped and then returned to the beginning of the loop. So let's look at our examples to understand the continue statement. Number equals 0. While number is less than 10. If number equals 2, number plus equals 1. Continue. Print number plus equals 1. The result is as you see. So our last control statement is pass. So we use pass when a statement is required syntactically, but you don't want any command or code to execute. So the pass statement is a null operation, so nothing happens when it executes. Generally, we use it as a placeholder. I'll give you an example. And when we run this code, Python returns an error. But let's try it with pass. 4 character in Python. Pass. And now you see that we don't get errors in our code. So now we'll talk about one more topic in this lesson, and it's the range function. So, what is the range function? It's a predefined function in Python. It creates a structure based on the values that we give it. This structure creates a sequence of numbers that is similar to lists, starting, ending, and optionally incrementing. So in Python, we can use the range function to represent numbers within a certain range. So why don't we see how it works? Range 0, 15. Now, of course, when we run this code, it creates a sequence of numbers from 0 to 15, and 15 is not included. So if we want to print this sequence, we can use the asterisk, print, asterisk range 0 to 15. It creates a sequence of numbers from 0 to 15, and 15 is not included. And the range function is a function that will take 3 different parameters. Now we know that if the first parameter is 0, we don't need to specify it. However, if we are going to use the third parameter in the range function, that is to give a command like range 0, 10, 2, we have to specify all 3 parameters. So this will create numbers from 3 to 30 by skipping 4. Print asterisk range 334. Now, if we do not specify all the parameters here, Python cannot understand which number corresponds to which parameter. Range 3, 10, 5, 5. So when we run this code, Python gives us an error and says range expected at most 3 arguments, and we got 4. So now, let's employ the structure that we created with the range function with the for loop. Did I steal your idea? For number in range 0, 15. Print number. That's it. All right, so in this lesson, we have learned the basic things that we need to know about loops and range functions. Also, we've learned about how to control the loops with control statements. So in our next lesson, we're going to learn some other data types in Python. Want to see you there? Have a nice day.